Hey guys, Travis Daggett, 818 Investments and Forefront Enterprises. Just want to talk a little bit more about talking to private sellers. You could call it negotiating. Um, so a couple things. Timing. So often people are, private sellers. It may be a vacant property, abandoned property. Maybe they inherited it. Maybe they moved out of state and just kind of left it. Maybe it was a rental for whatever reason. And so you're talking to them, and they're thinking, okay, this isn't something I want to hassle with right now. Maybe I will down the road. Maybe they're considering whether they're going to fix it up and sell it, or whether they just want to sell it to an investor. So one of the things that you can bring up with them that they may not have thought about is interest rates. So let's say you're talking to Mr. Smith, and he says, well, I think I'm going to go ahead and fix it up and put it on the market and sell it that way. And maybe at the price they want, or certainly at the price they want with the features of the property. It could be 6 months, it could be a year before it sells, especially taking into account the rehab time. So one of the things you can bring up to them is whatever you decide to do, Mr. Smith, is perfectly all right with me. However, one thing you might want to think about is interest rates. And interest rates are probably going to be higher a year from now. Isn't that true? And of course, that is true. They could be a point higher. So let's say that he thinks he's going to sell the house for $300,000. Well, the buyer that's qualified to buy a house at $300,000 now, a year from now, they may only be qualified to buy a house at $270,000. So you've just narrowed your buyer pool down even further. So that's something they need to consider. And of course, by selling to an investor now, they don't deal with that problem. The other thing they might want to think about, or you may run into, and you probably will if you talk to very many sellers, is the concept of some extra land or some extra lots. It's not that uncommon for people to have, let's say they have 3/4 of an acre, and most of the lots are 1/4 of an acre. They may even have the lot next door or something like that. And often those lots are not easily dividable, or the access isn't easy, or there's some easement issues. So in their mind, and perhaps at some point they were purchasing those lots or holding those lots thinking that they were going to add value, that they were going to subdivide them and build on them, or they'd be valuable to somebody. But the fact of the matter is, the regular buyer, your average buyer is probably not going to pay much more for extra acreage. If every house on the block is 1/4 of an acre and yours has 3/4, but it's not really usable other than a super big backyard, but it's kind of like a little forest there. They're probably not going to be willing to pay much more for it. Now you might say, well, I'll wait for that special buyer that is. Well, again, you're probably waiting for a year, or could be waiting for a year. An investor buyer that's going to buy that and maybe divide it, well, that could take 9 months and cost $25,000, $30,000, depending on where you're at. So that's something to factor into the purchase price as well. So either way, you're really looking at having to discount it. In the case of land. One other thing to think about is the repairs. So a good way to phrase it for that seller, remember we talked about the 3 types of properties: the non-financeable, the financeable but need upgrades, cosmetics, etc., and the ready to go. Well, if you have a property that's that's not financeable, or at least needs a total rehab, all the upgrades, you can say, Mr. Smith, for this property to sell on the open market now and to get that retail price you want, and to compete with the other properties that are fully rehabbed and updated, we're going to need to rehab this house. Now, do you want to take that on, or do you want me to? If you want to take it on, again, you're going to be taking that period to do the rehab, then to list it, then to sell it. That could be considerable. If you decide that you want to have me do that, and I will do that, then I take on that burden and that risk in that time frame. So just some other things to think about with talking to private sellers and how you can kind of let them know what you do and the service you provide and the benefit to them. Hope that helps. Travis Daggett, 818 Investments and Forefront Enterprises. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to get updates. And any comments or questions, I'd like to hear them. Talk to you later.